Welcome back, everybody. This is Class 2, and in Class 2 of Developing Trader's State of Mind, we're going to move from what I call biomechanical skills of breathing in a safe place and stress inoculation, where we learn to cool the arousal of an emotion so that it doesn't reach that critical mass and flip a switch and take over mind. Now we're assuming, and by the way, for those of you, it takes a heck of a lot more than 1 week to work with these particular skills and to acclimate them to the trading environment. This is something where my hope is that with recordings and with the journal, what you do is you have a format that once this course is over with, you have the ability of going back and deepening this experience. That's the point. What we've done here is we're on a journey. And the journey is this. The journey is that we have taken 1 of 5 steps. Tonight, we are going to take 2 steps. We're going to develop mindfulness as a tool, and we're also going to awaken ourselves to the internal dialogue. Now, before we launch into new material, what I want to do is I want to review what we've done, okay? And I'm going to give a quick review, and then what I really prefer is that if you have questions, if you have observations, if you will type them in as I talk about this, okay? Because ultimately, what we have to do is we have to review emotional regulation. That is what you guys were working on with the breath, with the safe place, and the inoculation. The key is the purpose of last week was to be able to manage the strength of emotion as it accesses the mind. And this, my friends, is what leads to our capacity to wake up to our blindness of what is actually going on in the mind. That's the critical point. Now it's actually time to develop the tool of mindfulness. But before we go, is there any observations? Is there any questions that you have from the breathing, from the safe place, and the stress inoculation? A lot of people get a kick out of the stress inoculation work. It's just so different than what they imagined. Is there any comments? I don't see anything, and I've tried to give some time. I'm going to give it a little bit more time, impatient that I am. Okay, what I'm assuming then is that you got it, it's basically understood, and that you've been able to apply it to your trading. Let's go to a concept of mind. Before we develop mindfulness as a tool, let's consider a new way of understanding mind. Is often what happens, we're sitting there thinking, you know, this is what my mind says, this is what I think, and there's all this I business going on. And I invite you to see another paradigm, to invite yourself to expose yourself to a different paradigm of the mind, is that you just don't have 2 minds. You're not just of 2 minds about something. There is a community within your mind that is constantly interacting with one another. And this community is what we're going to be exploring more and more as we deepen our work into this journey of the mind. Tonight, we're going to be looking at what is known as the internal dialogue. This would be both, you would find this concept in both Buddhism and Hinduism expressed, and you will see it in Judeo-Christian thought also. It's not quite right there. However, this thing is sitting here, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at 2 of the players within this internal dialogue tonight. But first, we're going to develop the tool. So, in your trading, as you trade, and the example I like to use is looking at setups with entry point there, and you've got the confirmation, it's time to go in, and suddenly what happens is thought life explodes. This is a very different thought life than you had, say, earlier in the morning when there was no risk available, nobody was doing anything, everything was calm. Suddenly self-doubt emerges. Suddenly there's a protagonist and an antagonist. There is someone who is scared to pull the trigger, and there is someone basically telling you that you're going to be wrong. This is the essence of the historical internal dialogue that we're going to be exploring that causes traders so much problem. But it's this concept of the mind as a committee, or the mind as a stage where there's various players creating a narrative. Here, my invitation to you is to think of the mind as a boardroom of a company that's in your name. The problem is that you have been asleep at the wheel and allowing management to run the company while you're the owner. And you've been asleep, and it just so happens there's two very polarized elements within that boardroom. One wants to go one way that is very destructive. Another wants to go another way that would be constructive. And what happens is because you have been asleep at the wheel, there has been a lot of self-doubt. There's been a lot of tension, a lot of conflict that does just a lot of spinning of wheels. We're going to be looking at that tonight. But that's the concept that I'm asking you to look at, and you begin to view your trading through that lens. It takes away a lot of the mystery of what's going on with your trading. So, with that, what I want to do is this. Are there any questions about this concept of the mind as a committee? And that there is no singular mind that is just one I. There is numerous organizations of the self that's possible. Well, now we need a tool that allows us to observe, to be witness to this committee. And most people, particularly if they've grown up in the United States and the culture of the United States, will not have developed the tool to observe the committee of the self. That's just the way it is. So what we're about to do is we're going to start developing a tool to be able to look at our inner reality. And here's the deal. Has anybody ever noticed this? This right here is that the very mindset that got you involved in trading is not the mindset that's going to bring success in trading. Many, many people, when they look at trading and they're going to Traders Expo and they're going to all these trader organization places, all these brokers, all these people, and they're pitching their stuff, and you're looking at this, and what you're hearing is, you know something, without too much effort, what happens is I can produce the two goals that I want to do. One is financial freedom. Two is personal time freedom. And you look at it and you hear these things and you think, well, I'm smart. I can handle this. I can do this. And you open the door. That mind that you are, that organization of self that you are, moves into that door, and you start getting hooked into trading. You start taking training. You start developing indicators. You start getting a broker. You start doing this, and all of a sudden you find out that as you develop all these tools and all these skills of methodology and platform, that there's really something basically missing. And it's called the mindset that you bring. Sounds like a magician, Matt. Ha ha, yep. The truth is that there is a sense of having to transform the self from one mindset into another. And Matt here is a person who knows me well and has worked with me and understands what a magician is within the archetypal framework. The truth is what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to vision a new person, a new mind that can allow us to trade more effectively. That's what we want to do. We need to change the self so the vision can come true. Now, what stops all this? It's basically your normal reality. What we do is we drift in mindlessness. If you were to think of the drift of life, is that we become oblivious to what actually allows us to navigate the currents of life. It's much like this. Several years ago, I was working with a woman, and I was talking about this drift that we all get plugged into in our humanness. And I was talking about life as a drift. You get caught in a current, and as long as you stay mindless, unaware, is you get simply taken to where the drift is taking you. And often that's in a quagmire. However, as you develop awareness, you begin to say, oh my gosh, I'm in a drift. I need to become aware. I need to develop the tools of navigating this drift. This is the tools that we're talking about today. And what the woman says, Randy, I got it. I got it. This is what happened to me. My husband and I were with our children in the Bahamas, and we were on a coral reef. And the boat had dropped us, and we were in water, and we were just kind of floating there looking at things below us. And what happens, I got totally absorbed in just looking at all the beautiful fish, the beautiful coral, and stuff like that. And suddenly I thought, where are my children? I lifted my head out of the water, and my children were 40 yards away from me. I had been drifting in unseen currents. I didn't know they were there, but it didn't matter that I didn't know they were there. The truth is I still got pulled by the current of these unseen currents. So this is her mindlessness. She's waking up to the mindlessness, and fortunately, it was enough to be able to pull everything together. So ultimately, it is in this drift of mindlessness that we end up doing some really dumb, stupid things. Like, in this image here, you think about who in the world would possibly do what these people are doing. At the same time, who in the world would keep doing the same stupid thing over and over and over again, hurting themselves, losing capital while they're trading? This is a sure sign that you're caught in the drift of mindlessness. And one of the biggest problems in our ignorance about being in this drift is our stubbornness. You keep you want to make the market do and behave the way you want to, the way you want it to. You don't necessarily say, well, the truth is I have to accept my own reality. I have to accept every consequence that happens, I have to accept. And the truth is, the way I'm going about engaging trading in the markets is not working. Instead of saying, well, I need to go change everything I'm doing because I know I'm right, I just need the right external stuff, what you start saying is, in this mindlessness, what is it I'm doing in my mindlessness that keeps me stuck in this particular place? This, my friends, is exactly what we're going to be looking at tonight. And before tonight, and as you take the lessons that we're going to expose you to tonight and take them into trading, the main thing we're going to be looking for is waking up from the mindlessness of your trading. That's the big thing. So we understand a little bit about mindlessness and why it's so necessary to wake up from it. There are other people in other different traditions that would say you awaken to life. You awaken out of the insanity. Leonard Cohen said, I almost stepped into an avalanche. It covered up my soul. It's learning how to step out of that avalanche and begin to become an observer of it rather than being taken in by the drift and down the vortex. This is a very different, narrow way, but it's very possible. So the question is, what exactly is mindfulness? Well, you probably talk to any person proposing this stuff, and you're going to get a number of answers. But here, the definition we're going to be using in trading is to become aware that we are not our thoughts and beliefs. And hold on to that, particularly the one about beliefs. So critical. You begin to realize that you are born into beliefs, you are born into thought patterns, your brain adapts you to them, they become familiar, they go into background, they become self-fulfilling patterns, and what happens is you drift in these currents. Waking up from that is you begin to realize that, my beliefs are really assumptions that have been hardwired as beliefs in my neural system. I can change that, and by that, change my cognition and my perception of the markets. Bingo. Further, what it is, it's a sense of stepping back to become a witness to our thoughts. Rather than identifying with I, you become an observer of the thought, going, well, this is an interesting thought. It rises out of nothingness. It rises out of the ocean. It has a life, and then it recedes or goes back into the ocean of nothingness, and it disappears. However, if you resist it, or if you're mindless, the observer that you are becomes attached to it, and that thought life takes you into the drift. Now, you may decide you want to be in that belief system, you want to be in that thought life, then that's a mindful decision of deciding that you're going to go in a direction. Also, mindfulness is the door to the reorganization of the self. Because up until this time, basically what you've been is a bull in a china shop. You don't even know that you're doing damage to yourself. You think what you're doing is going to be okay. I'll give you an example. I got a new client today, and it's interesting, is a trade education guy is the one that referred him to me. And he is very successful. He makes money every day. and he has a very good system that he teaches. And he's very good at teaching traders how to become successful traders. And yet he has a number of people who can't get it. The guy writes me and says, you know something, I'll tell you something. I don't know what it is. He will actually tell me when to enter the trade, and I won't do it. Now, what happens, he doesn't know why he won't do it. That is mindlessness. In developing the mindfulness, which that's my plan with him, is he will begin to see the organization of that resistance. So, the key is, that is the door that you open to reorganize the self. So fundamentally, mindfulness is becoming an intentional observer participant in the creation of your beliefs and your biases. Instead of being born into and stuck in the drift of the history that you were born into, you begin to create a different direction for your life, and that's how you become more effective. So, now we have an idea of mindfulness. And what I want to know is, so far, does this make sense to everybody? Because mindfulness is usually the place where, if you're a concrete thinker, a black and white thinker, this is where it gets to be difficult, because a black and white thinker is going to want to believe that there is a reality out there. It's a deterministic reality. Whereas in mindfulness, you begin to realize that the world is observer created. Two traders can look at the same information and end up with very different interpretations that leads to very different actions they take. Two different observers watching the same phenomenon come to different conclusions and different results. That's when you realize that all reality is observer generated. So, got 3 yeses. Okay, we're in the right ballpark then. Okay, so ultimately, mindfulness begins here. We're going to be discussing the internal dialogue soon. And my promise to you, if you ignore the internal dialogue, all these thoughts just whizzing around in your brain, or if you don't think they're important, you have already shot yourself in the foot. Your thoughts literally are the voice of your beliefs. And getting at them, thought life becomes something very important. There's not little nuances. They're not little nuisances. What they are is they're vital data to tell you how your cognition and your belief system is currently organized. No one escapes the internal dialogue. Just try not to think. In Eastern spirituality, one of the first things that the teacher does with a new student is to tell them not to think about the monkey on his back. And what happens is the guy tries to meditate, and all he can think about is the monkey. That's the internal dialogue. It is learning how to manage this fear-based internal dialogue that is so fundamental to success. And a lot of people don't even realize that they are thinking in such a way that limits themselves. We will be exposing that tonight. And then, besides just disrupting that, it is managing and then expanding this internal dialogue is the essence of a strong psychological trading plan. Ultimately, if you experience fear in trading, you are experiencing one element of the human condition. It is an inherent part of the human condition, okay? In the same way that fear is an inherent part of the human condition, so, my friends, is discipline. So, my friends, is patience. So, my friends, is impartiality, as is a sense of powerful internal discipline. So we got it, okay? That's what has to happen. And again, as we're going through this, mindfulness is so central. Remember that what you did last week simply disrupts an emotion from sweeping you away. It's not a game changer. What it is, it's a tool that everybody has to have in their toolbox to be able to work with mind. But it is not mind. So, moving from mindlessness to mindfulness, this is what's required. Taking full responsibility for the mindset that you bring to trading, every last bit of it. It's also recognizing that there are powerful emotional and mental forces within the mind. Then it's developing an awareness of our being. Instead of living in this drift and just, all you can think about is, what, the football game, blah, blah. is actually realizing there is a powerful life going on within the mind that if you tune into, you will begin to see what's actually driving your life. And the most important thing probably is recognizing that our brain built the patterns that make up our lives. So in this cartoon, what you're looking at a dog who is present in the moment. His mind is right there, whereas the human, the mind is all sorts of places, and she or he is not experiencing the here and now. If you're doing that, if you're not experiencing the here and now, you're not going to make an effective trader. You're going to be other places, you're going to be in other interpretations, and most likely you're going to be in negative appraisal that's going to lead to really horrible things. Like if you look in this bubble cartoon, you will notice that the person has all sorts of things going on, and most of them are negative. And that is because your brain is a negative assessment machine. Then it gets born into circumstances that reinforce that. So there you go. Now, let's take another jump then. Let's take a look at mindfulness and beliefs. Understand what is so fundamental about mindfulness and beliefs is the assumption I hold is that you trade your beliefs. And you will be able to find out whether or not your beliefs are effective or not by looking at your P&L statement or your account, okay? If you have an effective set of beliefs and you are taking full responsibility for your trading decisions, then in fact you will find positive growth in that trading account. If your beliefs are non-effective in the domain of trading, what you're going to see is that the trading account is going to shrink. No matter how much you believe your beliefs are true and a reality, the barometer that we use in trading is the trading account. If you're not producing income, then your trading beliefs are not effective, period. Now, the truth is, assumptions that our brain and mind are born into become imbued as the beliefs that become the truth. Okay? Now understand what we've said. The thing that I hold in the Judeo-Christian tradition, it would be called the truth is in the eye of the beholder. You know, in the tradition, some of the other traditions that I'm in is that all perceived reality is observer generated. That would be the one that I use most often, okay? What happens is that the beliefs become hardwired as the truth. They become patterned and are habituated. And that's the dangerous part, my friend. They become habituated. Because they're habituated, they become familiar and then are pushed out of our questioning awareness. Dangerous. Suddenly we're no longer questioning the explanations that we have of why things happen the way they do. We just accept it as true. And then if that's the truth, then maybe we're inadequate. Maybe we're powerless in trading. They become biases that we're blind to, and they shape our world and our performance in trading without our even being aware of them. Now, out of this, you would begin to think, this mindfulness stuff is pretty darn important, isn't it? Yes, it is. And what I want to do is I want to discuss what I call the 4 stages of mindfulness, okay? And the first one is showing up late for your life. This is asleep at the wheel of your life. Then is when some people notice that there is both an observer and participant in your dreams. Some people accidentally show up present in the here and now, and it produces peak performances. Other people are intentionally mindful, and they produce the active observation that allows them to design the self. Now, what I want to do, let's talk about this first concept. And as we're doing this, there's homework relegated to this, but as you're going through this, what I really ask you to do is start really noticing as I explain this, which one most typifies your sense of awareness, your sense of mindfulness. Asleep at the wheel while your life is being invented. Okay? Waking up late. This is a story I like to use because I've never found a better one yet. Is a few years ago, I'm working with a senior executive at a very large bank that is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he had risen to right near the top. He was a powerful guy. Along the way, he was so alpha, he was so type A, so focused on his career that what happens is he really didn't tend the garden of his home very well. He didn't know that. He just saw this career thing was so important. A divorce happened, and he didn't really get to see his children that much because there was bank takeovers and there was all this reorganization stuff. And so here he is in his 50s, mid to late 50s, and he's divorced, and he has married a pretty trophy wife, beautiful. Fine thing to have on your hand going to occasions and things like that, and being able to come into a bunch of guys and you're being able to sit there and say, look what I've got. Look at me. Trophy wife. The problem with this is everything was going fine until a heart attack happened. And it was a serious heart attack. He was in the hospital. He was in recuperation, but he was in intensive care. And what happened is he's sitting there, and the medical people are doing everything they can to save this man's life. They stabilize him, and then the first thing that happens is his new wife comes in to visit him. And the first thing out of her mouth is, honey, am I on the insurance? It's not about, are you okay? It's about, honey, am I on the insurance? And the guy kind of wakes up and says, oh my God, what have I done? He starts to begin to realize that he has negotiated a Faustian deal here. Then he calls his children, and they just simply can't find time to come see him. They're adults now, and they just, gee, Dad, I hope you're okay. Hope you make it through here. And he's beginning to go, oh my God. And then he calls his ex-wife, the woman who really truly loved him and really, really, really wanted to be with him. And she's got a new life now. She's got a new family, all that stuff. And she can't come. She wishes him well, and he's sitting there in bed and thinking, oh my God, I have spent the last 30-something years of my life climbing this ladder of success, and what I've discovered is I have put it up on the wrong building. I have the wrong goal. And he's talking to me, and he says, I don't know if my marriage with my wife is going to work or not. I know that we're going to have to re-examine it. I wish it hadn't taken me so long to learn this. And my question is, how many of you experience life this way? Okay, this is waking up late. You're observing this guy has had a heart attack, and is allowing him to step back at this moment, but it was way late. If he had had the capacity of observing himself years or decades before, life could have been invented very differently. Okay, so that's the question. Does this fit anybody's way of understanding the world? And to a degree, all of us do this, from one way or the other. I mean, I can't tell you how many people wake up and go, gosh, I wish I'd known that. Okay, the second form of mindfulness is, in fact, where you begin, particularly if you dream, okay? This is where it's really interesting, where you become observer and participant in a dream. Many people will have dreams, and in the dream what happens is that they're sitting there and they see themselves in the dream, and they can actually watch themselves as they're in it. Okay? This is very powerful. Some people are so just totally the participant in the dream that they become the I in the dream, and there's not a observer of the dream. And then when they start recounting it to someone, they start producing reflection, observation of the dream. Now, what does that look like? Has anybody experienced that phenomenon where they're dreaming and they can see themselves in the dream? There's a separation. This is really powerful, because what you'll discover is that what we're doing is we need to produce that in real time rather than while you're dreaming. Okay? So that's the second one. What I'm doing is I'm giving you examples of the kinds of observation and the sense of stepping back, so that you can begin to get, you can curl up to this thing and begin to see that observation's not weird. Observation is a very natural, fundamental part of being human, but it is a very underutilized and developed part of our life. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say American advertising, of what I used to be a part of, the one thing that we didn't want you to do was become mindful of your hidden biases and your needs like that, because we were selling into, we were positioning our products to be able to supply satiation to a need that you had externally, rather than you finding an internal way of dealing with that.